Luke chapter 18, 31 to 43. Jesus took the 12 aside and told them, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written by the prophets about the Son of Man will be fulfilled. He will be delivered over to the Gentiles. They will mock him, insult him, and spit on him. They will flog him and kill him. On the third day he will rise again." The disciples did not understand any of this. Its meaning was hidden from them, and they did not know what he was talking about. As Jesus approached Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard the crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him, "Jesus of Nazareth is passing by." He called out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Those who led the way rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and ordered the man to be brought to him. When he came near, Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Lord, I want to see," he replied. Jesus said to him, "Receive your sight. Your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus, praising God. When all the people saw it, they also praised God. Jesus is going to his death, and on the way he sees a blind man. Jesus is going into the most painful experience of his life, but he could still see a blind beggar and spend some time for him. How many of us would be able to see such a person when we are going through such difficulty, such torment, such pain in our own lives? Jesus tells his disciples that it's not going to be easy when I go there. Just like how Daniel had prophesied about a son of man who would be tortured by world powers who are represented by bears and lions in his prophecy and die. I will also die. Just like how that Son of Man would rise up, ascend to the right hand of God, I will also rise and ascend to the right hand of God. And I will get the authority over the whole world, just like how the Son of Man, who would rise again and sit at the right hand of God, would receive. But as he goes forward, his disciples fail to understand what he's talking about, and the people who are with him do not understand his pain. But there is a blind man sitting at the gate of a cursed place called Jericho. Jericho was cursed by Joshua many years ago. And he is a curse himself in a sense, because the Jews considered blindness and all kinds of deformity as a punishment from God for sin. They thought that it was an effect of generational sin. So this man who is born blind does not have any identity in the Jewish society. That is why Luke, to bring that point out, does not even mention the blind man's name. But Jesus has all the time in the world for this nameless, fameless beggar, penniless beggar who is sitting there. This man hears from others that Jesus of Nazareth, a prophet, is passing by. The others have identified Jesus as Jesus of Nazareth, who has made many messianic claims, many claims of being the Messiah. But he is not the Messiah, according to them, because the Pharisees and the lawyers and the main people of the temple have not yet recognized him. But to the blind man, he is the Messiah. The blind man sees Jesus. The blind man notices Jesus. He is not an ordinary guy. He identifies him as the son of David, as a merciful son of David. Jesus, the son of David, have mercy on me. Mercy is a quality that we see in David's life. David was merciful towards a lame man called Mephibosheth, who was incidentally the son of his biggest enemy, and he showed mercy to that man. David was merciful as a shepherd. He protected his sheep from lions and bears and tigers in the wilderness. He was a good shepherd to his sheep, and he risked his life to save their life. And he knew that his God is also a good shepherd. In Psalm 23, he says, God is my shepherd. I care for my sheep, and my God cares for me. The same David called himself Son of God. I am the representative of God. Then he became king. He said, God is the real king. I am only a representative of God, serving the people of God as a good shepherd, as a king anointed by God and appointed to represent him to his people who are his sheep, and he is the real good shepherd. David knew his position in God's kingdom, and he did mercy to people. Jesus, the son of David, is also going to do mercy to this blind man. The Pharisees, the teachers of the law, their biggest mistake was that they did not show mercy, generosity to the poor, the sick, the lame, and the downtrodden. And they pointed fingers at the greedy traitors, tax collectors, though they themselves were greedy. Jesus here restores the sight of this blind man to show him a glimpse of the future in which his body will be perfect in the coming age. He gives him his identity back. He is also a Jewish man, a son of Abraham. But nobody showed him mercy. Nobody did mercy to him. But Jesus is doing mercy to him, and he restores his sight. As Jesus himself had prophesied with Isaiah 61 in Luke chapter 4. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and God has anointed me to restore the sight of the blind. He is doing it now. To heal the blind man, he needs to first forgive his sins. And who can forgive sins but God? And Jesus is showing his disciples and his followers that he has the authority to forgive the blind man's sin and to reverse the effects of Adamic sin, which brought in death and deformity into humanity. Jesus is reversing the effect of Adamic sin. Jesus is reversing the effect of Adam's exile. Jesus is also reversing the effect of Israel's exile. Israel was exiled because they broke the commandments, the first 5 towards God. They worshipped idols. They took the name of the Lord in vain. They made false promises and oaths in the name of God. They worshipped other gods. They made idols. And they did not keep the Sabbath day holy. That is why they went into exile. Pharisees are trying to do it as best as they can so that God would return. But now the effect of that exile, the effect of that sin is being reversed in this blind man's life. He is somebody who is outside the temple. He had no right to come inside the temple. Because of the sin of Israelites, God's presence has not come into the temple. But now Jesus is restoring this blind man to show that God's presence is coming back into the temple. Because he is bringing this blind man who was once lost into the kingdom again. And he is God's presence personified. The blind man could see and identify Jesus as a merciful son of David, the Messiah. And after he was healed, he calls him Lord. And we know David himself in another psalm says, "The Lord said to my Lord," in Psalm 110, "Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool." My Lord. David calls him my Lord. And this is a messianic psalm which the rabbis used for the Messiah. So why does David call his son my Lord? And David also says, Jehovah is my shepherd. The Lord is my good shepherd. And this good shepherd, the Lord, who is sitting at the right hand of God, has authority over everything. And he is also a priest forever of the order of Melchizedek. David foresaw Jesus in this psalm. The Son of Man who would die for his sheep at the hands of the bears and tigers and lions of this world, the worldly powers, would die and resurrect and sit at the right hand of God. And that is the Lord of Psalm 110, who is also a priest, the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep so that he can forgive their sins, is sitting here as a priest too. He is a priest forever of the order of Melchizedek, and he can forgive sins. He can reverse the effects of exile. He is forgiving sin. He is dispensing justice as the ruler, and he is delivering his sheep from the wicked oppressors of this world. And this blind man who was oppressed all his life and had no identity, even the Pharisees and the lawyers who should have shown mercy to him did not show mercy to him, and they also oppressed him. Jesus is bringing justice into his life, and he is restoring him, bringing him into his original identity as a Jewish male, a son of Abraham. And then he follows Jesus. Until now, only the blind man could recognize Jesus as the son of David, a Messiah. Messiah means king, and God is their king. He is equating Jesus as the Lord and the king and God himself. And the people who were leading Jesus into Jerusalem, they had been telling him, keep quiet, don't shout. This man has not yet been recognized. Not only that, you don't have the right to do it. You are outside the temple. You are a sinful man. But now they also are praising Jesus. They also are praising God for this miracle. Maybe you are alone in praising God today in your house. But keep praising him. Eventually, God will do the miracle in your life, and everybody will join you in praising him. Jesus saw this blind beggar in his difficulty. This message is for some people who cannot see the sufferings of poor, the sufferings of the people who are rejected by the society, and the sufferings of the people who are labeled as sinners. Can you see the blind beggar? He may be blinded to who Jesus is. He may be blinded to forgiveness. He may be blinded by his greed. He may be blinded like this poor beggar himself, having nothing in his life. But can you restore his sight? Can you help him? Can you see the blind beggar? The blind beggar could see Jesus. Are you like those Pharisees and lawyers who could find fault with the blind beggar and put him out of the synagogue and could not see who Jesus is, even after all these miracles? God is asking you, can you see who Jesus is? Can you see? how kind he is, how merciful he is to people. Can you show some mercy, some kindness to people who are different from you? Or are you like the disciples who are confused, who do not understand, even if they hear everything clearly? Today, God is speaking to you. Pay attention. Jesus is God, Son of God, the Lord of the cosmos. He can forgive sins, and He can restore you and bring you to that kingdom of His in which there is life in the coming age, a resurrection body, a perfect body He can give you. Do you believe Him? Like the blind man whose faith healed him. Just before this, there was a rich man who could not follow Jesus, who followed all the commandments, but he was attached to his wealth. When disciples asked Jesus if that rich young ruler who was following the law so strictly cannot go to heaven, cannot find seat in the coming age, then who can? He has been keeping the law perfectly. Jesus says, what is impossible with man is possible with God. Here, Jesus is calling a beggar. What is difficult to do for somebody to leave all his wealth, or to give sight to a blind man, or to forgive people's sins and then restore them? What is more difficult? Jesus is doing the impossible thing to show to his disciples and his followers who he is. And immediately after this, a greedy, rich man, wealthy man, Zacchaeus, who became a traitor and joined the Roman government in extorting the poor Jews. When he meets Jesus, is transformed completely. He becomes a disciple of Jesus and he starts showing mercy to the poor. He could leave his wealth. He could give half of his possession to the poor. But the rich young ruler could not. What is impossible with people is possible with God. And the blind beggar is sandwiched between these two rich people. One person who could not make it. The other person who decided, who chose to make it. And the choice is again set before us. The blind beggar could not see. He was not a full citizen. But he saw Jesus. And he saw whom he needed to see. Are you able to see whom you need to see? He said, Lord, I want to see. He knew what he wanted. Do you know what you want from God? He wanted to become the full member of Israel. And Jesus did it for him. Today, this message is for you and for me. Are we ready to follow Jesus in this way? Are we ready to love him more than our possessions? Are we ready to believe in his identity? May God bless you.